Welcome to the High Performance Hockey Podcast. Today we're joined by Coach Dave King. Coach King is a Canadian ice hockey coach who's been coaching professionally since 1977. His most notable achievements are coaching Canada's national junior team to a gold medal in 1982 and coaching Canada's men's Olympic team to a silver medal in Albertville, France in 1992 and a bronze medal in Pyeongchang in 2018. Coach King also won gold at the 1987 Izvestia Cup in Moscow. Coach King coached in the National Hockey League for 15 years with the Calgary Flames and Columbus Blue Jackets, respectively. He was also an assistant coach with the Montreal Canadiens and Phoenix Coyotes. Other accomplishments include winning the CIS championship in 1982 with the University of Saskatchewan men's hockey team, silver medals in 1989, 91, and 2017 IIHF World Hockey Championships, and winning the Spangler Cup gold medal 3 times. Coach King was inducted into the Order of Canada in 1992 and into the Order of Hockey in Canada, along with Paul Henderson and Mark Messier in 2012. He was inducted in the Olympic Hall of Fame in 1995 and the IIHF Hockey Hall of Fame in 2001. Coach King was the first North American coach to coach in Russia and has also coached in 5 other countries: Canada, US, Germany, Sweden, and Japan. It's a very, very insightful conversation that we have with Coach King. In it, we speak about his early career in coaching, who his mentors were, how the game has changed from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s. We also speak about coaching against the Russians in the 80s, behind the Iron Curtain. Very, very interesting discussion on the technical and tactical aspects of their game and how it differed, the contrast at the time between the North American game. We touch on his coaching in Europe and the contrast between the North American game. And finally, we delve into the long-term athletic development model and advice for young aspiring coaches and players. It's a fantastic conversation. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Coach King. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thanks, Anthony. Always enjoy talking hockey.
Well, I have to look at your resume, and it's quite impressive. You've been coaching for close to 50 years. Lou Holtz once said, a lifetime contract for a coach means if you're ahead in the third quarter and moving the ball, they can't fire you. You've been ahead a lot in the third quarter, moving the ball. Your coaching career started in 72, 73, University of Saskatchewan. You last coached in 2018 at the Olympics. You've been involved in this for a lifetime. What do you feel looking back now, Coach, was the sustainability or the glue that kept you in the coaching endeavor for so long?
Well, I think really it's simple. It's a fascination with the game and the fact that I've always enjoyed my coaching. There's ups and downs in coaching. I mean, we know our shelf life is going to be limited. And, we know that in difficult times, it's much easier to change one person than it is a multitude of people. So it's the nature of our game. So once you accept that, and you know that possibly could happen to you, I just enjoy it. And I've really enjoyed the game. I find it very fascinating. When I first started coaching, I'm like a lot of guys, I was probably unconsciously incompetent. I thought I had played the game, so I know the game. And then when I started to coach, I realized, my goodness, there's a lot more to this. So just my interest, my fascination has always kept me being a student of the game, and that's kept me in the game.
Yes, we talked about this offline, really knowing the game, and there's so many working parts nowadays. And even as a former player myself, that there's just a lot of intricacies that go behind the scenes into the game specifically it is today. Your first coaching job was University of Saskatchewan. How did you get involved into coaching? I know you had a playing career, but was it a logical next step for you at the time? Or was it something where, you had a mentor, it led you into that profession?
Anthony, it really wasn't my plan to go into coaching hockey. I had played college hockey, junior hockey, college hockey, and I graduated in kinesiology. And I was coaching and teaching physical education in the high schools. And, my alma mater, Saskatchewan, hired a new head coach. They asked me if did I have time to kind of assist this guy and, kind of show him the ropes. So I did. And that got me into coaching a little bit. And then I coached for 1 year in youth hockey. And then I moved along up into junior and junior B and things like that. And I wouldn't say I got trapped in the game, but I had success. And so suddenly people start to notice that you have success when you coach. And so I had a chance to leave high school teaching and go into full-time coaching. And I can remember talking to my wife and saying, what do you think? And she said, no, I've got a beautiful job. I'm really enjoying what I'm doing. I love high school coaching and teaching. It's fantastic. And we had to pull up stakes and move. And she was all for it. And so when you have a partner that's very adventuresome, like I do with my wife, Linda, it makes it really, it takes away a lot of the things you can worry about. And, because you always do worry, in coaching, as I said, it's a short shelf life. But I got into coaching. I loved it and had some success. And suddenly you become a marketable commodity. And so I moved up in the game and have had a long time.
Do you look back at that now with your early career, specifically as a high school teacher? One of my mentors, Coach Dan Pfaff, he's a world-renowned track and field coach. He started as a high school physics teacher. And he says, looking back in the rear view, that teaching, just both in the classroom and then from a physical capacity standpoint, really allowed him to really hone in on his craft. And looking back at it, he thought that was a really important a step for him. Do you feel the same way, Coach?
I feel exactly the same way. I started really my first couple of years as a high school teacher were teaching biology because I had a major in biology when I was going to university beyond the kinesiology. So I taught in the classroom for the first couple of years and then went into, physical education and coaching all along. Yeah, I think that it prepares you very well because when you're working in the classroom with students, you can see there's different learning rates.
Yes.
Some kids can pick it up real quick. Others need more work. You've got maybe a complex topic that you've got to get across to these kids. How am I going to do that? What's the steps I'm going to do to make that happen? So yeah, you become good at what you do. You become good at your teaching skills. And of course, teaching and coaching really are the same thing.
Yes. Again, let's stay early in your career as a coach. Who were your mentors at the time that you looked towards, not only for procuring information, but perhaps building culture and creating a team environment?
I can remember when I was a young guy, coaches like John Wooden, who we all know is one of the greatest coaches ever. I was always impressed with him. Tom Landry with the Dallas Cowboys, the guy, I just thought it looked to me like he coached the right way. He had not a lot of emotion there, but he was always in control. His teams were very good. You could see there was extremely well coached like Wooden's teams were. So Bill Walsh, guys like that, those were, for me, they coached the right way, Anthony. They were guys I thought you could see their technical skill. They could get their team to play together, but they always looked like they had good teams, good chemistry. And I always thought those guys must be doing something right. And what I've always done in my coaching career, when I go to a bookstore and I see a coach by a basketball or a book by a basketball coach or soccer coach or track and field coach, I buy it because, coaching is working with people.
Yes.
The sport really doesn't matter all that much. It does. It's different, but you're coaching people. So those skills I've always tried to work on. Those are some of the models I thought were influential to me.
Yes, some of those coaches, specifically for me, I think, as you alluded to, you can nothing to do with hockey, but everything to do with hockey. John Wooden is a dear mentor. Obviously, I say a mentor. Several of his books on my bookshelf that are highlighted and Jim quotes on our facility wall. What a fantastic human being and a great coach, and people loved playing for him. They bought his message. You spent 5 decades, literally 5 decades in hockey. And I want to talk a little bit more as we progress through our interview with your book. But how's the game evolved? And I want to be a little bit specific. I know that you reference in your book, and your new book is Loose Pucks and Ice Bags. You talk in the 70s about the European invasion. You talked about the 80s, fitness and video, 90s, the Russian invasion, 2000, analytics. Looking through that kaleidoscope lens right now, what do you think the biggest differences in the game are now, present day, to when you first got into coaching?
Well, for sure, the sophistication in every category of the game, whether talking power play, penalty killing, forechecking, defensive zone coverage, any tactical aspect of the game now has been well studied. because of the video systems and the computer interactive systems. It's allowed way back in the 80s, a video when you first used it was reel to reel. So editing a tape took a lot of time.
Sure.
So the time limited what you could do. You had to pick your spots and do the right stuff. Now you can instantaneously review any aspect of your game. Yes. And gain more insights into what makes it work, where are the problems, that type of thing. So, the game has become sophisticated. We have, when I first started coaching, I was by myself. I coached behind the bench. I was the coach. Now we have coaching staffs of 5 or 6 people, plus you have your fitness coaches, your sports psychology coaches. You have all these other aspects. So the sophistication in the game has made, it's taught us more about the game. And as you said, the game has changed. Like now, at one time, we taught defense, but let offense happen. We relied on instinctive play to be the dominating factor for offensive play. We had a lot of structure on defense. Now we've still got that same structure defensively, but we've also added some structure to the game offensively. The key always is, Anthony, is how much is enough? Sure. How much structure can you have to your game? Our game's a very interesting game. It isn't like baseball. It isn't like football. It's ongoing, nonstop. We don't have a huddle after every 4 or 5 seconds to discuss a play, and everybody knows their responsibilities. It's very much a read and react or act and read type game. So that means we have to be really sharp as coaches and educate our players very, very well, because we rely on them to be the decision makers, not us so much. And so, hockey's become so sophisticated. The coaching is so much at a higher level than ever before. But there's still some common, very important things that'll always be there. And I know we're going to talk about some of those in the next little while.
Absolutely. And it is an interesting paradigm to talking about the contrast between football and baseball and hockey, right? These are independent interactions. You get up to the batter's box, whether you steal a base or not. Hockey's organized chaos. There's many working parts, and it's very, very hard. Even in the analytical standpoint, I'm passionate about sports science and analytics. I'm fond of saying no man has ever stepped in the same river twice. He's not the same man, and it's not the same river. Everything is constantly moving, and therein lies the problem of over-relying and not trusting your gut or judgment as well. So very interesting contrast between sports. So I asked about the game, and you said coaching's changed as well. How has coaching changed? Besides well, now I believe you have more on your coaching staff, right? There are more people in the staff, but how's coaching changed from your infancy days?
Well, I mean, for a second, I'll touch on what I was on before, the theme I was on before. You have a multi-coaching staff. You have 5 or 6 people. Everybody's got a specialized area that they're responsible for. So it means the amount of information, it's not getting information, it's organizing it and deciding how much is enough is the biggest problem. So there's loads of information to a coach. And sometimes you feel almost overloaded by it. So the real art of coaching is taking the information, what's significant to you, what fits into your scheme of things, what fits into your philosophy, how you want your team to play, that type of thing. So those are the decisions now that are so much more difficult. Is you have a vast amount of information, you have a lot of people, you have a lot of opinions, and that's made coaching just a little bit more complicated than ever before. And the athletes now too, they want more. Like they're knowledgeable. They're growing up through youth hockey. They're getting very good coaching. They know the game better than kids did at that age way back. So your clientele is changing too, which makes it always more complicated. So it's a dynamic job. It's a really, but that's what makes it so fascinating and so interesting, is the fact that it's constantly changing and you have to constantly improve because it's expected. And so now we've got a game that we just have to be careful as to how much is enough. As I always go back to that point with coaches when I talk to young coaches, is it's great to know a lot. And it's great to have a good knowledge base, but what is appropriate to the level you're coaching at? What fits the situation? What is the right thing at the right time? You can try to put something in place that's too soon for kids at a certain age. It won't work. So there's a real art to coaching. The science of coaching, Anthony, I think is very easy to get. I mean, there's videos, there's coaching clinics, there's all kinds of ways to get the X and O's, the tactics, the techniques. The art of coaching still is the huge difference maker. And the most winning teams usually have teams that are tactically really strong. They've got good technique. So that part of their game is good, but they've also got somebody at the top who understands environment, things like that really make a difference.
And I would imagine elite communications, heat meter. We're fond of saying in strength and conditioning, it's not so much the best program, it's the perception the athlete has of the program. How do you get that done? You build trust, you build accountability. These are things where you create culture. I would imagine that art is what you're referring to, correct, Coach?
Yeah, exactly. And it goes back, you talked earlier about, in my book, Loose Pucks and Ice Bags, I talk about the change, and it's an evolution. It's almost in decades. But, when we first started to play against the Russians, they were in the European teams, they were so fit that we couldn't go the distance with them fitness wise. And we recognized, what are these guys doing that we're not doing? So in the 80s and late 70s and early 80s, we hired a lot of coaches from college hockey to the NHL to work as assistant coaches. And in those days, they would be the guys who would do the fitness, do the video, a lot of that type of thing. So they brought some of the science to the game in the 80s. Yeah. And we started to use more video, believe more in fitness, find out a lot more about fitness and how it could really enhance our teams. And then, of course, in the 90s, we had this Russian revolution. When Russia basically fell apart in 92, 93, all the players were released, and we had a huge number of Russian players come to our league and bump up the skill level within our league and bring new ideas, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, the game is constantly changing and evolving. That's why it's such a fascinating game to be part of.
You bring me to a beautiful transition here. Behind the Iron Curtain, playing the Soviets in the 80s. And you allude to it in one of your chapters here. And I want to refer to it directly here. But from a technical standpoint, at the time, contrast when you first were experienced, I believe you said it was, and I'm mispronouncing this, hopefully not, Izvestia Cup in 1983 was your first touch point watching a practice. Contrast, what was going through your mind when you watched that practice? What were we doing differently at the time in North America compared to what the Russians were doing?
Well, it was a real eye-opener because the pace of their practice was unbelievable. And the precision in skills at high pace was amazing. You watch a practice and they hardly miss a pass. And they could make a bad pass look like a good pass with the reception skills. So their technique was amazing. The pace was amazing. And then just the idea that they kept everybody active in practice. Like there was a lot of drills we now call flow drills that involved as many as 8-10 players at a time, almost like a full, like in football, we play 7-on-7, things like that. So there was really a high amount of participation, activity in practice. And they just ran a different workout than we did, less standing around. And the pace was just mind-boggling to how fast. I can tell you, when I first started to coach internationally, Anthony, it was really interesting. Like I came in as a college coach from Canada, coaching Canada's national team in European competition. And I tried to play our game against the Europeans. And then I quickly realized that rink is too large and they're too flat. We can't sustain this aggressive forechecking we're trying to impose, because in our game in North America for years, it was the ability to forecheck aggressively, to force turnovers that created the scoring chances that obviously led to success. But against the Russians, we might be able to forecheck for 8 or 10 minutes at a good pace. We couldn't sustain it for 60. And so as soon as we started to get a step behind, boom, long pass, breakaway. Things like that. Like their counterattack game was so quick, so fast, and so accurate and precise that we could never sustain it long enough. So then we said, okay, we got to get fit for sure. We got to improve our fitness. And secondly, we have to look at our tactics. What's appropriate on this bigger sheet of ice? Yes. What adjustments do we have to make that allow our players to effectively be better? And so we had to use our heads and think a little bit. And that's when we started to change our tactics a little bit. take some things from their game because we could see it was there, steal those things, bring it into our game, allow our culture and our environment and mental aspects to apply to it and try to make it work. And that's what we did.
Interesting here. I'm reading right from your book here on this chapter, Playing the Soviets. And these are some of the things that they did so well. I thought was very interesting. The puck carrier was subordinate. I love this idea, right? The puck carrier, one touch passing, constantly skating aggressively off the puck, giving different reads. They were collectively deceptive. I thought was fantastic. And they were extremely, they had high hockey IQs. Was that something that at the time in North America we didn't feel was being taught, or was that just something where it was a different in tactics that exposed how you felt that difference emerged? Does that make sense, that question, Coach?
Yeah, it does. And I think you're right on a really good point. I think way back into the 50s, 60s, 70s, our game was very much a straight line, physical style of game. We wanted to impose the forechecking on the other team, always play in their end of the rink as much as you possibly can, be physical, wear them down, make them go the distance. Our game was based on emotion, some tactics, for no question. There was tactical play, but it was quite simple, not complicated, and really always based upon the physical aspects of the game, making the other team have to go the distance. And the Soviets and the European teams like Sweden, Finland, they were tactically really smart. Like, they moved the puck quicker. They used more of the ice surface. They had constant change of positions. And then, as you talked about, the puck carrier was subordinate to the other four players. Yes. Like, he didn't dictate to them. They dictated to him. Like, if I remember watching Tikhonov and Tarasov behind the bench, they were the Russian coaches. The only time they would get angry at a player is when he had a good opportunity to pass the puck to a guy in a better position, but didn't. Then he would get reamed out because, whoa, our game is, you're not dictating here. Those guys off the puck are. So those are aspects of the game that we picked up. And one of the biggest monumental occasions in our game was the 1972 series, Canada-Russia, where the NHL players formed an all-star team to play against the Russians. And it went down to 8-game series. We won the game 8 to win the series, but we didn't win it on skill and tactics. We won it on physical play. We basically intimidated them to the point where we had good refereeing that allowed us to play that way. And so Canada won, but it really wasn't winning the way we thought we would win it.
Yes.
We thought we could win with our skill and technique, and we couldn't.
Gosh. Speaking of those coaches, Tarasov, 19 Soviet titles, 9 world champions, 3 gold medals, the father of Russian hockey. Tikhonov, 8 world championships, gold medals, Olympics, 84, 88, 92 golds. Did you have relationships with them, meaning like friendships, coaching relationships? I know they were very different people. I think Tarasov was much more jovial, loved his, his athletes. Tikhonov was a little bit more, to the point. At the time, I mean, obviously there's coaching conferences now. You can meet coaches, call coaches. Were they open to talking, to teaching? How were they, and did you learn from their experiences?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Tarasov was, you got him pegged absolutely correct. He was a very jovial guy, really saw the game much like a basketball coach would see our game. Quick transition, interchange of positions, a real dynamic type of game. And Tarasov would talk to you. I remember working a couple of clinics in Canada here with him on the ice, and he would always share. And he just loved the game and loved to talk hockey and wanted to share. And he really was always a nonstop student of the game. And really, he taught us a lot. If you read his books, and they've been translated from Russian into English, very, very interesting. The detail and the attention that he spent to the game was amazing. Tikhonov, not a very communicative guy, much like he was with his players. Didn't have a lot of time for personal contact with you. The guy I really got to know better on his staff was a guy named Vladimir Yurzinov. And Vladimir Yurzinov was the assistant coach with the Russian team under Tikhonov. And he was the first coach. And he's been a very successful coach in his own right. And he's the guy he would come up to the room after a game and have a beer with you, and through a translator would talk and share. But Tikhonov was very much into himself and had very little time for any interpersonal interaction.
Interesting. I want to pivot a little bit here, Coach. Again, you've had decades and decades in the game, coaching in the National Hockey League and then coaching in Europe, Germany, Sweden, Russia. I believe you were also in Japan at one point. Talk to me about the differences between the North American game and the European game. I know there are probably many differences, surface, but from a standpoint of what you saw, the contrast between those two styles of play work, could you expand upon a little bit?
Yeah, and I would say right off the top, at one time our styles were very divergent. You know, the Russians and the Europeans played a very different game on a larger ice surface. And as I said, constant interchange of position, the puck carrier being subordinate to the other four players, the defenseman very involved in the attack, lots of motion and extremely quick, accurate one-touch passing that really picked up the pace of the game. We put on a smaller rink, so we wanted our game to be organized. We were linear in our positional play. Mm-hmm. We had restrictions on where players could go. A right winger would play up the right side, the left winger there. The centerman was given much more flexibility. Defensemen were primary defenders, not so much attackers in that era, with a few exceptions like Bobby Orr and a few guys like that. So the games were very, very divergent. But you know what happened when Russia changed in '92? There was kind of a globalization of the game. All the European countries could suddenly watch NHL TV, and they could see games in their entirety, not just highlights. They could see NHL games in Russia, in Czech Republic, Switzerland, Germany. So suddenly the globalization of the video of our games really educated a lot of people in Europe. And so the European game has come a little bit towards our game. We were always moving towards their game. You know, we were adjusting our game, trying to incorporate some of their tactics and ideas into our game, and it worked very well. Bob Johnson, Herb Brooks, guys like that were wonderful at bringing those aspects to our game, and the right aspects, not trying to make us European players, trying to keep the North American personality with a little bit of that European know-how. And the Europeans were coming in our direction with their game. They realized that we defended so well. We were so organized with our defensive structure that they were very impressed with that. So the two games started to move towards each other and merge a bit. And that's what we've got now. We've got kind of a hybrid game going on. When you watch the KHL games or the Swedish elite games on TV and from Europe, the style is different, but not as much of a contrast as ever before. Now we're playing a much more similar game. You can bring a Russian player now into the NHL, and you can get him immersed in our game very quickly. Remember back in the early 80s, bringing a Russian player or a Czech player to the NHL was a big change for that guy. Yeah. It was like, wow, what kind of a game is this? Why are you shooting it in? Why do you chip it in behind the defenseman? In Russia now, they do some of that as well. It's not just possession. There's aspects of our game incorporated into their game. So it's been a real evolution for us all. And it's really, I think, brought a real globalization to the whole style of game. We're all playing a little bit differently, but there's more similarities now than there is differences, is about the simplest way I can say it. We just have a lot of similarities to our game, not nearly as many distinctly contrasting ideas.
I love it. And another thing that was brought up in the book that I really liked, the 4 playing roles, right? On the offensive side. Could you expand on those a bit? So there's obviously on the offensive side, you have the puck. You don't have the puck. On the defensive side, you're the guy you're the checker, or you're not the first person. I know that that's overly simplistic, but can you expand upon just a couple of those for us?
Well, when you're working with young players, one of the concerns you always have is when you're on the ice, you have a role to play. Some kids, years ago, when they didn't have the puck, didn't see a role for themselves. They just basically thought, well, I've got to go get the puck, or I'll wait for the puck to come. So when you're educating young players, the 4 roles of the game, offensively, you're the puck carrier, is one role. Another role offensively is when you don't have the puck, you're working to get open for the puck carrier. You see him in trouble, you support, you get closer. Those are things that kids can learn. from the defensive point of view, this was really prevalent in our game. If you were checking the puck carrier, you're obviously very accurate, very active.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
If you weren't checking the puck carrier, sometimes you watched the game. Basically, you were an observer and things were happening. You had no idea. Yeah. So we started to teach that second role of defense off the puck, defending off and away from the puck, awareness, positioning, yes. Adding some information so kids could see, oh, I have a role when somebody else is checking the puck here. If I take this guy, great. He's got less options to work with. If we stop the puck, I can overload. We can contain the space a bit, shrink, squeeze the play a little bit. So those 4 playing roles are put in place for young players to understand when you're on the ice, the game is in your hands.
Yes.
You do have a role to play. Whether you're on offense or defense, there's basically 2 roles. To simplistically look at it, it's probably more, but there's 2 roles on offense and 2 roles on defense. And that helps youngsters understand the game. And that's how we teach the game. Those are simple things, Anthony, that start to turn the wheels for a young player where he senses, okay, good. Now I see more about this game. And so that's part of the science of the game. Yeah. But it's made the game a better game. And that's why the game is so much more complete now. When you watch kids play at a young age, they play offensively and they play defensively. You hardly ever find them spectating. They know they've got a role. When they're on the ice and out there with the other 4 guys and the goalie's the 5th guy, I've got a job to do. Whether I've got the puck or not, I have responsibilities. And it helps young players learn to play the game. I
really like that. You're an active participant, whether you have the puck, whether you don't, whether you're the first person on, whether you're not, you're in the game. I really like that, Coach. Yep. It brings me to another beautiful transition here. We're talking about young players. I know you have a big passion for development, long-term athletic development. Your time in Europe, your time looking at different models, contrasting different learning styles, long-term athletic development, Europe versus North America. Let me start by asking, do you see stark differences in the models right now? I know everything's really, long-term LTAD. I say this really nicely, Coach. I don't know if you had the same experience as I. Specifically speaking, a lot of times I think there's good in theory where people, you lecture, and then you might not understand it, or it doesn't get, there's volunteers. At the end of the day, we have to educate. That's the goal. Do you see a different contrast between LTAD in North America and LTAD in Europe, whether it be Sweden, Russia? Are there massive conflicts or differences in their development?
Well, the content is becoming, as I said earlier, the content, how we play the game is becoming a little bit more synthesized. We're playing a hybrid style of game. So there's not as many differences in terms of there is the tactical play, but not as many as there were. It's more similar now, tactically. Okay. However, the process of developing players is very different. And you hit right on it, Anthony. In North America here, and in most European countries, the coaches are the volunteer guys. Sometimes they're parents. And so we have all these programs to educate coaches because they have the will to do it. We got to give them the skill to do it. So we have these programs where we try to teach coaches how to coach and how to understand the game and therefore be able better to teach the game. And that's a very important point. In Europe, primarily, I would say in Czech and Russia to start with, they have a club system.
Yes.
So every Russian elite team in their top league has their development system in their city and in surrounding cities that feed them their players. And the coaching is, it's ex-professional players, Russian professional players. And so it's a high level, sophisticated coaching from 4 and 5 or 6 years old all the way up. It's a system that's still very, very Soviet in its nature. It's discipline. It's the coaches are in control. Parents sometimes can't even come to watch the kids practice in some places. It's discipline. It's work. If you don't pass the test, you're out. Somebody else will be brought in and take your position. So kids have to really work at it. Our system is very democratic. We want kids to learn the game, have fun at the game, learn some values from the game. We hope some kids will go on and play the game professionally, but that isn't our focus. In Russia, for example, in Czech Republic, with those club programs, that's the focus. You're trying to develop future players for your team because it's much easier to develop them than it is to buy them. In North America, our game is fun, fitness, learning to cooperate and enjoy playing, being part of a team. We have some, socialistic ideas that I think are very important in our game. So that philosophically, the processes are really different. The content, how we want to play the game, is much more similar in both places. It's the process that's really different.
Can we have our cake and eat it too, Coach? Here's what I mean by that. I love this idea of the club system. I think specifically at a young age with young kids, if you're looking at motor competency and really getting the best bang for your buck in terms of getting your stride signature, having really good practice designs where these are we would argue, your biological windows of really harnessing skill at, from anywhere from let's say 5 to 13, 14. One would argue that that's probably the most important time qualified coaches should be on the ice. And when I say, can we have our cake and eat it too? In a utopian world, could we have a club model in the US, or is that feasibly impossible with the amount of numbers that we have registered for youth hockey?
I think it's feasibly impossible. And I think you hit right on it, Anthony. The numbers, the vastness to our programs in the US and Canada, the number of kids with female hockey as well.
Sure.
We have so many children now getting involved in hockey. It's a voluminous activity with lots and lots of people. So, but what has happened is interesting. We have now what we call skill coaches.
Yes.
A lot of people in the game, ex-players, you work in the area of fitness, but there's these skill coaches now too that run skill academies that supplement the community programs the kids are in. Yes. So even during the season, they can go and get supplementary skill development with a really talented coach who's at a high level. So we haven't gone to the club system, but what we have, and it's typical of our way of generating business from sport. Yeah. We do now have a subculture in the game of skilled coaches, consultants, all kinds of people that can give youngsters that are really keen and have obviously look like they've got some potential. They can access that. It costs money.
Sure.
But they can access some of that high talent, skill coaching talent, and really improve their games. So, that's what's happened. That's how we kind of improved the process. But we still rely on the volunteer coach. But the level of volunteer coaches got a lot better. But there are always examples of coaches, youth coaches that get armed and dangerous. They get a lot of knowledge, and all of a sudden they're going to get really into it and they become a genius. And that's a real problem. So you and I like to talk a little bit about aspiring coaches. I have some suggestions for aspiring coaches, but there's no question. We are doing a much better job at a younger age now of giving kids that supplementary activity through these coaching, stick handling specialists, skating specialists, fitness people, whatever. We've got that now, but it's independent industry within the game.
Yes. Let me ask you a last question here on long-term athletic development. What do you think we could be doing better? What do you think we need to improve on right now from a development standpoint? Is it the education of volunteers? Is it procuring more skill coaches? How do you think we can improve the model right now in North America?
I still think we have to work at the base of the pyramid. We still have to try to improve the ability of that volunteer coach to kickstart that little guy's career in the game. They're the ones, if we can keep like what USA Hockey does and Hockey Canada does, those coaching programs for adults to get involved in the initiation part of the game with young kids, those are still huge things because that's the starting point. That's where you can create an interest in a youngster, whether it be a boy or a girl, of playing the game and getting better at it. And they're interested. They develop a love for the game. A lot of that comes from the coaching and the environment the coach creates. So we still have to do a lot of work, I think, at the base of the triangle. At the top, we've got all the specialists doing all kinds of things, but it's at entry level.
Yep.
How do we keep those kids in the game longer is still our biggest challenge, and we have to do that. And that's coaching education.
I like that, Coach. I like that a lot. Hockey sense. Can we teach that? How I know that's a very direct question. Mm-hmm. One would argue, oh, you're born with hockey sense. You're born, you can improve the hardware. The software is really, really difficult. I would imagine this depends on the age of the player, but from your experience in coaching, hockey sense, could you expand on that
That's
for us?
it's a very interesting question. In my book, Loose Pucks and Ice Bags, I talk about that because I was a teacher and I was in the classroom. And I learned one thing when I was way back as a teacher. You might get a student who's a C student in math. And I'm not going to make him an A student, but I could make him a C plus student.
Yes.
If he or she is keen and I do my job properly, I can probably, I hope, get that youngster to a C plus level as a math student. Okay. So in hockey too, it's the same principle. Yes, I'm not going to make a guy who hasn't got great instinctual aspects to his game. I'm not going to make him a hockey genius. But can I improve his hockey sense? Oh, yes, I can. I can make him better because in our game, there are reoccurring game situations that happen all the time. There are patterns to the game that exist. They're not as clear sometimes as other sports like baseball, football, but we have a pattern to our game. So there are things, yes, you can help a youngster understand, and then his execution will be a little bit better. Yeah, he'll still make mistakes because he's gone from a C to a C plus, but he's better. So I think anybody that says you can't improve their game sense, that's not correct. And I think it's a cop-out. I think you can make a youngster a better player game sense wise. Again, I'm not going to take one who's a C and move him to the A category. Yeah. I might get him, he or she, to the C plus or the B category, but I can make them a smarter player.
I would think too with technology, i.e. the use of video, being able to see, and then small area games as well. I want to hit on something, it's an off the cuff question, but I'm passionately curious. Can you talk to me about a couple reoccurring patterns that you would allude to for a young player teaching hockey sense?
Yeah, for example, if you look at the idea that we're defending, there's only so many ways a team can exit their zone on a breakout to initiate their attack. So there is the movement of players. There are patterns to it that give you cues, give you reads that allow you to make the right decisions defensively to try to counteract what they're doing. So from breakout into the neutral zone, attacking teams have so many options. Defending, obviously, we can put things in place, reading the pattern, reading the flow of the game, how we put them into a smaller bit of the ice. And you mentioned things like small ice games. Really, really good stuff to teach the concepts of the game and the understanding of the game. Video is a great way to show kids some of those reoccurring game situations and patterns to the game because they're there. Can they see it? And does it work? Does it click in?
Yes.
And that's repetition. So with youngsters, video is a very good teaching device. And if it's used properly and constructively and positively, it can make a youngster think the game a little better, see some of those patterns that exist, and all of a sudden, wow, they're better at the game. I just think that's the way it is. Our job is to make the player better technically, but we want to make them better tactically. That's game sense. And that can be worked on. It can be improved. And I think the small area game is really a big plus to the game because the best teacher of the game is the game. Playing the game is terrific. And sometimes they make lots of mistakes, but it's only small area hockey. Who cares? That's the important thing. And it's really important in coaching, Anthony, if you want to, I'm getting on my Apple box here.
I love it. Keep going.
With coaching is don't take away their optimistic mindset. Youngsters come in the game and they want to try everything. Good. Try it. Try it. And if it doesn't work, we'll try to help you with that. But, when we're raising our kids, it's a hard job. So we have lots of can'ts. Can't do this. Don't do this. And then they come to the rink and they're told you can't do this. You don't do that. I think when they get into a sport that's like ours, a free-flowing game, basketball's a little that way as well, let them think optimistically. Let them have an open mindset. Let them try to do different things. In time, we can bring them around and help them a little bit, knowing when to do that, when's appropriate to try that. The idea of trying it's good, maybe not in this zone, but in the offensive zone, it makes sense to try to stick handle by somebody and attack the net. In our zone, that's not a great idea. So, we've got to teach kids the right way. And I think it's really important to always try to keep that positivity they have in their minds because they love what they're doing and they want to try things. Let them try it.
I love it. I love it. I want to transition here slightly. I want to ask you some personal questions. Fondest memories as a coach. I don't know if they exist because you probably have so many, but are there a couple memories that you say, wow, those ones really hit me during my career that you could share with our guests?
Well, when you ask that, you're always a little embarrassed because you have to start talking about things you've accomplished, and so I remember winning the National College Championship in Canada. That to me was, we were a program was a really dire need of help, and we had the right crew of guys to do it, and our players found a way, and we won, and that was really nice back in, I think it was 83, something like that, a long time ago. I can remember Olympic medals, a World Junior Championship. Those are accomplishments that I enjoyed. But I got to tell you, too, close to Columbus was the Columbus Blue Jackets. And I got to tell you, that opportunity to coach that expansion team was a thrill. Yes. And it was one of my fondest memories because we were an expansion team. The expansion rules weren't very good then.
Yes.
I mean, you got a lot of players that were getting their first shot at it. And they weren't experienced NHL players, some of them. And the thing you had going for you is that they wanted to prove everybody wrong. It was their opportunity to prove the hockey gods were wrong. I'm a better player than you think I am. And so bringing those 22 guys together in Columbus and getting them to play together and play way above their head to be competitive, that was lots of fun. So anytime I look at my situation from coaching accomplishments, I don't always look at winning. I look at how far we came. What did I think, our environment was like? Because I've often found this, and it's a serious thing. Lots of young coaches want to be successful. And so they're really into tactics and techniques. That's good. That's really good. But don't forget environment. Because all my teams that have been successful, they have one thing in common. The players are all different because some are now 50, 60 years old. Some of them are still 25. The thing they have in common, they love the game, and they were in a good situation where they loved to play. They enjoyed it. And that's what we made. And with Columbus Blue Jackets, that first year, our chemistry was amazing because they just had so much to prove. And they knew they had to do it together. Gosh, that was lots of fun. That was great.
You hit on culture. I've probably said it several times in this podcast. Our listeners probably roll their eyes, but I think great coaching is a lot like gardening. Gardeners don't grow flowers. They create an environment for flowers to grow. And I think that's the real creating an elite buy-in is that you talk about the science. You got to know what you're talking about, but can you get someone to do something they trust in, they love, they want to come back to? That's the mark of a really good coach and a good communicator.
I couldn't say it any other way. That's terrific. I really agree with that. In fact, when I look at people I respect and I watch teams play, I always look for those things that tell me, the intangibles that tell me these guys are really enjoying this, And when I watched the St. Louis Blues play, when they won the Stanley Cup that year, Craig Berube played for me when I coached the Calgary Flames.
Yes.
And the Chief was a great chemistry guy in our team. He wasn't a very good player. He was as tough as could be.
Yes.
But he wasn't a great player, but he was really important to our chemistry. So I'm watching St. Louis play, and I know I can see this chemistry. I can see these guys are all on the same page. They believe in how they have to play. They have an identity that they enjoy, and they can go back to it in difficult times, and it comes through for them. So I know a lot about winning teams, and winning teams have a good culture. They have not always crystal clear chemistry. There always is. Every team picture I've got, I can tell you there's a couple of guys you go, oh my goodness, that guy was a lot of work. That's coaching.
Yeah.
That's coaching. That's the way it is. And they make it interesting. They make it frustrating.
Yeah.
But they also make it very interesting.
That's fantastic. 5 qualities. It doesn't have to be 5. Maybe it's 2. Maybe it's 1. What are some qualities that you think are needed to be an elite level coach, or just a coach that can create that culture, can create the change, and be sustainable at high level hockey?
When I look at really important qualities for a guy to be successful at the elite level, I think number 1, and I read this somewhere, I forget where, it was a baseball book, be hard to please but easy to play for. That is very important in coaching. Be hard to please, but easy to play for. Like, yes, you're demanding and you want it done the right way. And that's good. But when it isn't quite done that way, you're still easy to play for. You give feedback, but you give it the right way. You show them an example. You understand some situations. Let them figure it out. I don't have to tell them anything. They're going to figure this out in time. Just be patient. So yeah, be hard to please, but easy to play for is one. I think another thing that's very important to me is there's an old expression I read somewhere years ago, about sailing. You can't control the winds. You can only adjust the sails.
Yes.
You have to adapt. You have to adapt to the personnel you have. Are you trying to do things that doesn't fit that group? Are you trying to make a player do things he can't do? Because if you're doing that, he's never going to get there. What are his strengths? Play to his strengths. Coach to your team's strengths. So be able to adapt and be able to adjust and be flexible, be open-minded. That's a really important part of coaching. Another important part of elite coaching is you have to give feedback, Anthony. You know, that's our job. Our job is to give feedback, but that's hard for some guys to take because it isn't the message. It's how you deliver the damn message that is the hardest part. So, you know, I think it's really important to understand that there has to be a respect there. But in the game, we all know what gets rewarded gets repeated. And that's important. So you got to be positive. Secondly, what gets rehearsed gets rewarded and gets repeated even more. So if you practice it, reward it, it'll get repeated. And we also know a third one. What you tolerate, you will get. That will get repeated. So what you tolerate will get repeated. So if a guy's making mistakes, you can say, "Oh, I don't want to." I know he's a moody guy. I don't want to talk to him. He'll keep repeating those mistakes. You gotta give him feedback. So don't back away from feedback. Just give it the right way.
Yes.
If you can't give it, can one of the other coaches? Can you transfer it to one of the other coaches? Can you use video? Is your presentation of what you're trying to get across got some positivity to it? And then, of course, obviously, choice of words, all those things allow you to deliver the message. But you have to deliver the messages. I guess that's what I'm saying. Don't be afraid to deliver the message.
Yes.
To try to improve a kid or a player. That's the key, is how you do it. Another thing I think elite coaches have to do, Anthony, is why. Tell your players why we're doing it. Not just how and what we're doing. Why? Because understanding precedes execution. If they understand it, they execute it better. It's so simple. So if you can tell them why you're doing it, not just how and what you're doing, all of a sudden they get it. And sometimes it just blows you away that this guy starts to do it. Holy gosh, he's got it. He figured it out, and that's important. So, and then the last thing with any coach at any level, and especially in elite sport, is I think you have to have good self-management skills. The game is emotional. We want our players to be good at things that happen a lot in the game. We as coaches have to be good at things that happen a lot in the game. And that's a bad goal, a bad play, a bad call by the referee, some parents yelling at us. This happens every game. So we have to learn how to deal with those things as a coach. If you want your players to be disciplined and you want your players to concentrate, we have to learn to do the same things ourselves. So self-management skills still allow you to be able to coach with lots of energy, lots of commitment. And usually because of those skills, it allows you to enjoy it as well. Because if you're not enjoying it, I can tell you right now, the kids you're coaching aren't enjoying it, or the men you're coaching or women you're coaching, they aren't enjoying it either, because it just doesn't ever work that way. If you're not having fun, very likely they aren't either.
I feel like I just got my undergrad and I just proceeded to a PhD. What unbelievable gems. Thank you so much for sharing those. That was absolutely fantastic. Thank you. And that's years and years and years of wisdom right there. That's unbelievable.
And Anthony, it's years and years of making mistakes.
Yes. Absolutely.
Sometimes I look back and say, boy, did I mishandle that player, that situation? Because I learned one thing a long time ago. It takes a long time to establish a relationship with a person, whether it be a player or anything. One incident can really change it. You can, especially with players, you can break that relationship with a bad conversation, and he never trusts you again. the way he did at one time. So yeah, you got to be smart. You got to be in control. And that's really a big part of coaching is our self-management skills so that we can do the job we can do.
Speaking about coaching and communication, I wanted to quote something in the book I thought was outstanding, but I wanted to ask the question about communication, specifically, perhaps, the difference between your early days in coaching and this, the generation where there's millennials now. There's more technology. There's more than anything in social media. One of the things that I really loved, and I highlighted in the book, says the coach has the greatest impact. So create time to socialize, not just organize and analyze. I thought that was absolutely fantastic. Getting players, perhaps it's away from the rink, maybe it's bowling, maybe it's to build that chemistry, cohesiveness, and understand people, because that's what coaching is. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Well, yeah, I think that we tend to sometimes look at the player and look at only their technical, tactical aspects of their game. And, there's a whole other side to the player, and that's his emotional side, his mental side, his self-confidence. All those things are so important. I learned a long time ago that, when you're working with young players, I always tell young coaches, be careful labeling players, because I've heard coaches say, oh, that guy's not tough. He's afraid. Oh, that player's not smart. He's not an intelligent player. And sometimes it's just lack of self-confidence. It's nothing more than that. The youngster doesn't quite believe in himself yet, so he's not involved in the game physically as much as he'll back away from some situations. He doesn't want the puck. When he gets it, he gives it away. He just wants to get rid of it. So I always tell coaches, there's a lot more. It's like the iceberg, you can see a little bit above, which is their technical, tactical, but below that waterline, there's a lot there. That's the person. That's their self-concept, their confidence in their own abilities, those kind of things. And if you can really, the best coaches are technically, tactically strong. And we also throw a label on them. We say they're players coaches. And that's okay, but that's what they are. They have time for people. They understand you win with people, through people. And I think, tactics and techniques are important, but environment to me overrides all that. Hey, I'm a guy who's watched tons and tons of video, and people say he was really good tactically. Yeah, that's okay. That's great to hear. But it still comes down to the environment, and no one affects the environment like the coach does.
Yes.
You set the table. And if you set it the right way, it's really important. And now in our game, almost at every elite level now, we have a core group of players. If you like, it's our leadership group. And every 2 weeks or every 10 days, you bring in your leadership group as a coach and with your coaching staff, and you talk about the team. How are things going? Is there anything that we're doing that you think, guys, we'd like to change? We have a road trip coming up. Here's our possible agenda for it. Itinerary, what do you think? Do you want to practice on that day? What are your feelings would be a practice that day? Doesn't mean they're running the show.
Yes.
But we're asking them for their opinion. We're giving them a chance to say something. And when you do things that they suggested, that's very meaningful for them because they're sensing, oh gosh, that's pretty good. This guy's really thinking about us. And once the athlete knows you're thinking about them as people, you're on your way. I mean, that's when some of them open up and become better technically and tactically because they want to please you. They like you. Don't have to love you, but if they do respect you and it's really good, there's an old expression. They don't have to like me, just respect me. I disagree with that.
Yes.
They have to respect it. It doesn't hurt to like you because happy players are better players. And if they like you, they'll go an extra mile for you.
And Sean Burke always, I had a chance to interview him, and he said, he talked about having the relationship with a coach built on trust, where he knew if he did something wrong, it was not just the fear of letting himself down, but letting the coach down. And I would argue the fact that if you have that, meaning like you have that trust, that buy-in, it's also easier to give. I know it's not always perfect, but it's also easier to give critique, knowing that it's coming from a place of trust, care, and understanding. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. You're exactly right. I mean, if you develop trust with the player, there can be the odd hiccup where he disagrees and gives you the look or says something, or you give him the look and say something, but you still know long-term, you guys have had a good rapport. You've had a good relationship, and he knows you're trying to help him. and that's the essence of the whole thing. And so it helps you sustain yourself with players is having good interpersonal skills. You don't have to be Santa Claus every day. We're not saying that. And you have to run the show. But the game has become, I can remember when I first started coaching, it was really a dictatorship.
Yes.
Basically, I coached the way I was coached, which was it's my way or the highway. This is what we're going to do. I don't care about your opinion. I don't even want your opinion. I'm doing it my way. Now the game has changed. It's a partnership. Yep. At almost every level. We have to do that. And I think that's a very important thing to always remember is that it is a partnership, and you just if you socialize and have time to be part of the equation in terms of the social aspects of your team, boy, the guys like it. They like it a lot. And I've always been very self-deprecating. I'm a guy who I bring humor on myself and the guys love it. Like when I give myself darts in front of them, they're all going, yeah, that's great.
I love it. So that's good. Could you expand a little bit again on all your career? How did you create a work-life balance? You talked about how understanding your wife was, how awesome of a partner she's been throughout your career. I know you have kids as well. You had a massively busy schedule. Were there passions that you had away from the rink? How did you keep things intact with all the traveling? What was your work-life balance? Or was there one?
Yeah, there was. But I got to tell you, it still came down to my wife being so patient. And she pinch hit in many situations. I couldn't be there for a game to watch my daughter play soccer or something. Linda was there. So she really made a great effort to really always be present for the kids so that there was at least one of us there if I was away traveling with the team. And then I did some smart things. I used to be a real avid golfer, and I stopped golfing. I said, it's ridiculous. I got these young kids. My job takes me away. Why am I playing golf in the office? So I just quit playing golf. I said, that's it. Takes too much time away from my kids and my day in the off season. I've got to really commit myself to my family. So we've done that a lot. I took my son Andrew to the Izvestia Cup in Moscow with me one year. So I included them. My wife Linda has gone with me on some of our trips. So she can see what goes on. And so I've tried to include them in that way. And then I just think the other thing that's really important is you have to look after yourself as well, not just others around you. So I've been a real advocate of fitness. I run every day. I try to read, as I said, that's my therapy, reading other coaches and realizing, hey, they're going through the same things I was going through when I was coaching. And so, I just think you can't be too hard on yourself. We're all guilty of that at certain times in our coaching career because now expectations are huge. So you got to learn to manage the expectations around you and not have that affect your life away from the game. And a lot of people I see in the game, I see a lot of casualties. People that the game's got to them. They didn't manage expectations very well, Anthony. They've had issues, and their family life has gone off the rails a little bit. And there's lots of those things in the game. It's because coaching is at the professional level, is a very hard profession. And we have to acknowledge that. So, look after yourself. Don't be hard on yourself. Exercise. Read about other people doing it. And then always see the big picture. When I'm on the team bus and we're going to the rink, I always make sure I focus on the bus stops. We stop at a red light. I always look to my left or right, and I look for a bus stop, and I see people collected there. And I see a guy with a lunch pail and a hard hat going home after work, and I realize, okay, wow, I got a pretty good thing here. I widen up. It's not just this game tonight. There's more other. So I always find opportunities, if I can, to keep my focus a little wider. Because with coaching, it's without a doubt, narrowing your focus is part of the job, but it can't be there 24 hours a day. For about 3 hours, be really focused.
Yes.
After that, try to widen up a little bit and see a bigger picture.
I really like that. Coach, I want to respect your time. Do you have another 5-10 minutes?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. I want to, again, transition a little bit for advice. And advice, I want to break it down in a couple different categories. I'd like to start with advice, looking back in the rear view. What would be your advice for young aspiring coaches that want to get involved in high performance hockey?
Well, I think that's great. Number one thing I would say, Anthony, is take your time, learn as you go along. Don't be in a rush. Be a student of your game, and I mean all aspects of your game, not just the technical and the tactical. But as I said, be a good person, socialize, be part of that part of the coaching as well, because environment is everything. So I always tell young aspiring coaches, techniques, tactics are easy to pick up. Your interpersonal skills, helping to develop the chemistry of your team, providing a good playing atmosphere where kids can learn things beyond just playing hockey.
Yes.
That's an important part of your job when you're coaching kids. So environment. The second thing I would say is practice what you preach. At the start of the year, we all have meetings with our players and we say, okay, you got to be disciplined on and off the ice. I want you to always work hard. I want you to be well prepared. That's the same for the coach then.
Yeah.
You got to be well prepared. You got to look after yourself. You got to be disciplined on and off the ice. So if I'm expecting those things from my kids, I have to be able to show that. I have to be the model for that for kids. Be careful labeling players. I hate it when coaches slap labels on a young guy because sometimes escaping those labels can be so hard. He's not tough enough. So this guy might carry that label for 5 or 6 or 7 years. It's got nothing to do with he's not tough enough. He's not confident enough to get into engage in the physical part of the game. So, be careful because labels can stick to people. And sometimes it's just a way for you to get off the hook. He's not a smart player. So he's making mistakes. It's not me. He's just not smart. So it takes me off the hook for any accountability for the player. And then, as I said earlier with you, can't and don't. Don't use those words too much. Keep the optimistic mindset. Let the kids play the game for the right reasons to enjoy it. Because if they're having fun, they're going to learn, they're going to develop, and they're going to go and stay with it a lot longer. And I think it's okay to be constructively critical. Just be really careful getting cynical, because that's a real negative mindset, and you got to be really careful like that. The game, it can be a burden. It can get repetitious. You can get ground down by our game as a coach. I mean, if you're coaching kids, you've got parents too. I'm lucky. I've coached almost entirely my career without parents.
You got parents.
On occasion. But boy, when you got parents, it really complicates the whole equation. So with coaches at those aspiring coaches, there's got lots of challenges there. So you just got to, if you can keep some of those things in mind, you have a better chance of being more successful at it. Doesn't mean you're going to go up in the game, but at least you'll be able to say when you're done, I enjoyed what I did. I enjoyed what I accomplished. Maybe I didn't get to the college level or junior level I wanted to get to, but I still had a lot of fun at it, and I stayed with it a long time, and I've helped a lot of kids.
Fantastic. Advice for hockey parents.
Oh, here we go. Hockey parents. I think the one, I do. Let's look at the parents' point of view. Parents putting out a lot of money for their youngster to play hockey.
Absolutely.
Like the other day I was in a sporting goods store and I saw youth skates for kids. I thought they can't be that expensive. They are. Their equipment is huge. There's usually a registration fee. So now with our sport, there's a pretty good investment in it. So not just there's a emotional investment in your kid, but there's a financial investment. You want them to get a fair chance because you as a parent have put a fair bit of money out for this youngster to play hockey or try to play hockey. So the most valuable asset any parent has should be their kids. Not your house, your car, everything else, your reputation, it's your kids. That's your most valuable asset. You want them to be happier in their life than you were. You've had a happy life. You want them to have even a happier life. So when they aren't being treated in your impression fairly, that's when people's wires get detached. The other thing I would tell parents is really simple. And it's a very important point. As a parent, if I constantly second guess the coach, his competency, the guy knows nothing about hockey. You're not playing the right position. You don't play with the right players. You're not playing enough. When parents vocalize that or verbalize that to their kids, that really affects progress because the youngster doesn't have a great feeling about the coach. He thinks this guy is an incompetent. Yeah, I'm not being treated fairly. And they get this victim mindset where it's not them, It's the coach not doing it right for me. And, so parents have to understand when they talk in front of their children about the coach and it's a negative vibration there, that really slows development and it slows the fun down. It takes the fun away from the kids. So as a parent, you may have your opinions. And I think if you phone the coach, that's better than it is verbalizing with your kid, the guy's incompetent. If you want to phone the coach and ask about some things, go ahead. I'm sure he'll probably try to give you some answers, but don't do it through the kids. Don't poison their minds with negative thoughts that affect having fun and it really affects their development. Parents don't understand sometimes. They tell the kids the worst things you could possibly tell them, that all of a sudden they don't believe in that coach. And then the development slows down.
Very good points. Advice for young players.
Boy, number one, enjoy the game. Have some fun, enjoy it. But having said that, you generally enjoy a game better or any activity when you put lots into it. So, the idea of wanting to be a player, and enjoying it is really important. But there are simple things. One, be good at things that happen a lot in the game. That's why the coaches are teaching you passing and receiving. That's why they've got them or somebody else teaching you how to skate. Be good at those things because they happen every shift. So, we know you want to work on your shot. That's good. It happens once in a while and not every shift. But skating, passing, receiving, it happens every shift. So be good at things that reoccur in the game. If you can do that, you got a chance to be good at it. I always use the statement, there's decisions and there's choices in the game. I say decisions are made with your mind. That's game sense. The choice to make a pass here versus there. To be able to look at a winger as a defenseman with the puck, I look at the winger, I can see he's being crowded. Boom, I pass out the middle to the centerman who's wide open. That's a great decision. But then in the game, there's choices. Choices are made more with your heart than your head. Getting in the shot lane and blocking a shot hurts. It's not fun, but that's a choice. And then you learn after a while, kids learn, if our team makes a lot of smart and usually easy decisions, we make good plays. And if we make hard choices, taking a hit to make a play, standing in front of the net, getting punished a little bit, going into traffic to get a puck. If we make hard choices, we're successful. So smart, easy decisions and hard, difficult choices, that's success for hockey. So youngsters got to understand there always is going to be in our game some physical commitment to it. That's why we have to have good physical training. We have to really stress respect for the other team, checking from behind. We got to be like, I don't care if the referee didn't call it, you as a coach got to call it. If one of your guys cancels somebody from behind, let them know that's not part of our game. Whether the referee or saw it or not, that's what we have to do. We're trying to make them better people. So I think that's really important. And I think the other thing I would say here is you're part of the chemistry of your team. Like you have a role to play in chemistry. So, I always use the three expressions: see it, appreciate it, acknowledge it. So when I see a guy get in the shot lane, wow, I'm on the bench. I say, ooh, that guy, that's a difficult play. I appreciate it's a good play. So then when he comes to the bench, I acknowledge it. Great job getting in that shot lane. Way to block that shot. He'll do it again.
Yeah.
And that's how chemistry builds. We can do all the team building we want to do. And it's more ice-breaking than team building, in my opinion. But we can do a lot of team building things. Team building still takes place in the course of the game. When you see somebody make that very difficult play, he's thinking about the team. And acknowledge it. Let them know, man, that's terrific. Boy, wow, that really helped us win tonight. Hey, if you do that, you're part of chemistry. And that's how chemistry is built. It's built through the players.
Yes.
More than it even is the coach. It's built a lot with the players.
Decisions, choices. This is brilliant. I want to have you, if you could, talk about the book, Loose Pucks and Ice Bags. I'm 100 pages in, and it's an absolutely fantastic book. Coach, I will link the book through Amazon on the show notes of this podcast. Could you expand a little bit on the book, why you wrote it, and what is inside of it?
First of all, I want to give my wife an awful lot of credit because I wrote it. She proofread it. She typed the manuscript, and she did a lot of work to produce this. And the reason we wanted to produce this is I'm trying to help coaching. That's when I'm done and finished with my life and people are talking about me in 20 years, I hope they say, he put a lot back into the game. This guy gave a lot to the game. I don't care how many championships I won. If I'm trying to put something back into the game so others can enjoy it, that's what I'm really trying to do. And this book, I think, is a lot of it's common sense. I've tried to make what sometimes people think is a very chaotic game understand that it's reoccurring. It's not always chaotic. If you look at it, there's patterns of play that reoccur every shift. And so it makes any fan or serious hockey person, if they read it, they're going to say, I understand more about the game. Maybe some of the things were a little technical for me, but overall, I got a lot out of it. That's what I want the book to achieve, is help people understand the game and hopefully enjoy it more, whether they're coaching, watching it. I think it's great for a fan because sometimes people think it's so easy. You know, when you're watching something from the stands, you're outside looking in. When you get in the midst of a game, holy mackerel, people are going everywhere on the ice. You got this much time to make a decision. You might get physically run over by somebody if haven't got your eyes up. So it's a hard game to play. And I think sometimes even parents don't understand that. It's not basketball or football for your kids on their feet. They're on skates and they have an implement to handle a puck, not their hands or their feet. So it's a very difficult game for everybody to play. And this book tries to help people understand it is a challenging game, but it's understandable. And I hope it clarifies for them. And I should also mention, when I coached in Russia back in 2005, 2006, I wrote a book about my experience. It's called The King of Russia.
Okay.
And The King of Russia, now with our situations with the Ukraine and Russia, is an interesting read because I talk a lot about the mentality of the Russians I was able to work with. So people contact me and say, geez, that book, it's interesting. I'm reading it now because we have this battle going on with the Russians here a little bit. And so I think it's another book that's of interest. So all I'm trying to do with all this stuff is just make people more aware of the fact that it is a great game. The more you know, sometimes the more you can enjoy it.
Of course. And I'll link both of those books to the show notes. I have not read that one yet, Coach, and I will order it on my Amazon list. So thanks for sharing that. Last question, legacy. Yeah. When I ask legacy, I look at you and say that you're a legend in our game. You've been coaching for 50 years. You've coached at every level. You've left the game in a better place. What is your legacy? How do you want to be remembered, whether it be coach or through the game, maybe is a better question targeted. How do you want to be remembered legacy-wise?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I mean, within the game, as I said earlier, I hope people, when they talk about me, if they do talk about me at all, after I'm gone, I hope they say, boy, he tried to help other coaches. That's what we have to do. We have a responsibility in any profession. If we can help others understand it more and then maybe enjoy it more, they're going to help more people. We're going to create a better environment for other people. So I think that's really important. And in my coaching too, I got to tell you, it was a transformation. I started off as a bit of a dictator, and so I learned there's better ways of doing things. So, I think I'd like people to remember that I'm trying to put something back into something that I love very much, which is coaching. And because I think it's good for people. I think sport, any hobbies, those kind of things are good things for people. Yes. You need things to also supplement to your daily work. You need other activities that bring you joy, that bring you sometimes some frustration. But that's what I'd like people to say, boy, he put lots back into the game. Because I've learned from some good people. I tell you, I learned from some great coaches. There was guys that mentored me when I was young. There's a guy at the University of Alberta, Claire Drake, and another gentleman, George Kingston. Yes. These guys, when I started coaching, they knew so much about the game. And I was this novice coaching at the University of Saskatchewan. And I thought, oh my goodness, have I got a long way to go. But they shared information. And I've always tried to share information. So if I have a legacy, I've not kept any secrets. I've always tried to share information and allow somebody the opportunity, if they want to take it, to learn more about our game.
Our guest today has been Coach Dave King. Coach, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. I enjoyed it.